Everybody, it's Paul from Karis Pen Co. And today I'm going to talk about 3 alternative refills that you can use in our G2 pens. So that would include the INK Rollerball, the Render K, the Bolt G2, and the Retrakt. And I'm going to use the Retrakt during this video to show you how to use these refills, specifically because the Retrakt is the most difficult with one of these refills to use. The other 2 refills are just easy, just swap in and out, keeping the spring from the G2 that's normally in the pin. So with that being said, let's get started, and I'll tell you a little bit. So I don't normally use rollerball pens. It's not my choice of refill. I'm not a big G2 person. They're just a little bit too dry for my taste, so I tend to use a fountain pen when I write and when I take notes or anything, and if I carry something around that's like a click pen for quick use, I usually use an EDK. That being said, these 3 refill options are refills that I've used and enjoy a lot more than the stock G2 refill that we ship our pens with. Now, we chose the G2 because it's relatively easy to find around the world. It's something that people have access to, and it's a standardized refill and you can get it relatively inexpensively. And it is a really good refill. Don't get me wrong. It's probably the #1 refill in the world, which is why we predominantly use that refill. That being said, the first refill that I'm going to show you guys how to use is it's the LP2RF-8UF. It's a pilot refill. All that is really kind of jargon, their internal stuff. It's the Pilot Juice refill. So you can type in Pilot Juice, J-U-I-C-E. And it's literally just, it's not a rollerball, it is a gel ballpoint refill. So it's a little bit different, and for that reason, and that reason alone is a reason that I prefer this. It writes a little bit, the ink just feels wetter to me because of the ballpoint. So real quickly, we'll go ahead and walk through how to swap this one out. This one doesn't take really any kind of quote-unquote hack, like we'll see in the later refills that we're going to use, in the last refill specifically. This refill is literally the exact same dimensions as the G2. It's the same length, it's the same width. It uses a similar mechanism on the tip. So just take apart your Karis Pen Co. pen, whichever one you potentially have. This one is the Retrakt R-Type. Unthread it, take out the refill. I take out the spring too. Some people leave it in there. I take the spring out because if you put the refill in and the spring's still in the bottom, sometimes they can bind up and they won't go in smoothly. So I prefer to take the spring out too. Make sure it's on the refill correctly. Insert it back into the lower barrel. Reattach, and you are good to go. Works just perfectly right out of the box, right like it should. This one just happens to be a 0.38, so a really fine nib, or fine tip size on it. Sorry, I'm in fountain pen lingo here. It does come in a variety of different sizes and a large variety of colors, which is another reason why I like this refill. So there's that refill. So let's set this G2 aside and we'll just kind of move to the next refill that I prefer. The next refill that we're going to go over is the Hi-Tech C Cavalier. It's another pilot refill. In fact, all 3 of the refills today are pilot refills. The Pilot Hi-Tech C, we used to make the Render K to take the Pilot Hi-Tech C standard refill. That refill is becoming harder and harder to find, and many times when you do find it, you have to get it from overseas. But Pilot started making the Hi-Tech C Cavalier, which is a Hi-Tech C style tip, and it's for a retractable pen. So again, this is going to be similar in length. It has a little cap on the end of it to keep the tip from deforming, but it is a similar width and length as the standard G2 refill. So as we talked about earlier, this one's going to just be a quick and easy swap from whatever refill you currently have in your pen, in your Karaspenko pen, as long as you haven't done some modifications to accept a non-standard refill, non-110mm refill, then this should be relatively easy. Again, remove the refill, take a hold of the spring. On the tip of this, of your Hi-Tech C Cavalier, is going to have this little contraption. It basically keeps any damage from happening to the tip of this, because the tip is very specific for this refill. It necks down to this very, very fine point, which is one of the reasons why I like this. It's fine and it's very wet. Attach your spring to it, to the front of it, put it back into your pen, thread them back together, and once again, works just as it should. Nice action. And then this pen is a very fine tip. It's almost like a drafting pen or drafting pencil, a pen point. So it's gonna lay down a really fine line, nice and wet though. It's one of the reasons why I really like this refill. You do have to be careful of the refill itself though. It can, if you drop it, it can deform the refill itself. I accidentally did that and it broke the refill. I had to switch the refill out on one of the other pens that I was using this on. So it is a little bit temperamental, but it can be delicate. So just be careful with that refill itself. Okay, so the last refill and the most in-depth refill that we're gonna have to look at, but also my favorite refill and the one I use in the Retrakt that I take notes with on a weekly basis here when we have our meetings, is the Pilot Precise V5r. It's a mouthful to say. It's a rollerball pen, but it is a superior rollerball in my opinion to just about any other rollerball that I've used. It doesn't feel like a rollerball when you write with it. It is wet and puts down a really precise line, but is extremely pleasant to write with for as fine a tip as it has. One of the things that you'll notice on this pen, hopefully we're showing you some photos of this, is that the back end of it has a little like fin area, and that is something that we're going to have to take into account for when we use this, specifically in the Retrakt. So with any of our other pens, this can go straight in and work with the spring. So the INK Rollerball and the Render K, put it right in, put the spring on it, put the grip section on, it'll work perfectly. Similar with the bolt, you can just slide this into the bolt. Don't have to worry about this end at all. Put the spring on there, put it back together. The bolt action will move just as smoothly as any other of the standard G2 refills. But with the Retrakt specifically, we do have to take into account these fins. There's two different ways to account for them. There's a quick and down and dirty kind of manual hack that you can do that doesn't require any changes to the pen itself. So I'll show that one first. And all you really have to do is you can just use your nails to bend these fins inward so that the gap between them is so they're basically touching. And then why you're doing that, the reason you're doing that is because the end of this plunger is, the diameter of it will actually move between these if they're open like they normally come. So you want to bend them together so that it actually has a surface area that is a small enough diameter to let this actuate. So I bent these in. We can go ahead and take this apart, remove our previous refill, set it aside. I'll put the cap back on it since this is actually a brand new refill. Set it aside. This goes, again, like I said, specifically, definitely with this refill, you want to make sure to take this out because you can like really put it in between the springs. Put it back together, thread it in, and you're good to go with those fins bent in. It's really quick and easy. Now, over time, those fins, because they're plastic, they will spread apart and then it will not work. So you'll have to take it apart, rebend them back. But there is another way, a more permanent way to basically adapt the pen itself to accept this refill and other refills that we're not going over today. And that is, we'll just set this aside, take this apart. We're gonna go ahead and focus on this end. And that is basically, we're gonna modify the Schmidt click mechanism. So this Schmidt click mechanism just threads in and out. It could be a little bit tight. If it is tight, go ahead and grab something that allows you to get a tighter grip on that. Something rubber, sometimes like a rubber pot holder or something like that. Anything, if you don't have anything like that, you have a bike tire that maybe has a hole in it, cut a piece. You can use the bike tire, the inner tire, and basically grab it and pull this out. So this actually already has the adaptation put on it, but I'll show you how to do it. So when you remove it, it should just look like this. You see the plunger end, which actuates the refill. It is a smaller diameter than that would be normally if we hadn't bent those in. We're gonna set that aside and pull out your accessories that you got with your retract mechanism. So this is a length of tubing that we include specific for this pen so that you can make this hack. Basically, we put this in with the pen since we launched this pen to allow people to cut this to size to make spacers to fit other refills. So it will work with a variety of different refills. This is one of those times where you can use this. Now, you're gonna need something to cut this on and something to cut this with. I don't happen to have a straight razor or a razor blade. That would be the optimal thing. Make sure that you're careful with this. Kids, you know, don't do this. Please have your parents do this if you're watching this video. Be safe with a cutting instrument. I'm just gonna use a knife, and you can cut this to any length as long as it doesn't, as long as it's shorter than the retention detent that's on here. So it just needs, because it just needs to go on the end. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna widen the diameter of this by using this material. So I'm gonna cut one that's relatively long, and then we can go ahead and set the rest of this stuff aside. And then what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna try to get that back to round, and then we're gonna put this, it can be a little bit difficult, put it on, and then push it down using a flat surface so that it's flush with the bottom of it's flush with the bottom of the actuating knob, basically your plunger. Because all we're really doing, guys, is just trying to make this plunger wider so that it will catch all of these fins. And so we're good to go. It's on there, it's perfect. We'll thread that back on, put it back together. And once again, we have a working pen. You can leave that in place. It will work with your other refills that are wider in diameter that you don't necessarily need that adapter to be there. So you can leave that in place for the rest of the time that you have this pen. It's not going to interfere with anything, and it will actually allow you to use some other refills that we didn't cover in this video, specific to Uniball refills that don't have a plug at the end of them. They're just open. So with this, you can use some Uniball 207 refills and similar refills that Uniball makes, signal refills specifically, just to swap those in and out. This is my favorite refill. The Precise V5r is probably my favorite refill short of using a fountain pen. It's smooth, it's wet, it writes a really fine line. It's just a pleasurable writing experience. And one that I found recently, I kind of ran across it. I was just buying refills just to test different hacks for. And this is one that I use every day here at the office when I'm taking notes. Just a great writing experience if you want to change it up on your pen. So those are 3 different hacks, guys, that you can use. And I say hacks loosely, but there are 3 different refills that you can move to if you like a different writing experience with the Retrakt or any of our G2 refills. Like I said, if you have any questions specific to these refills or other refills, you can put them in the comments below or email us. There is a laundry list of refills that will fit our pens, and then there are quite a few refills that do not fit the pen. Some of them can't even be hacked to fit the pen. So if you have a refill that you're that you're really tied to and you'd like to know if it would fit, just shoot us an email or comment in the section below and we'll get back to you as soon as we see it. Until next time, guys, that's the quick and down and dirty on how to adapt the Retrakt pin and basically any of our G2 pins to 3 other G2 style refills. Talk to you next time.